Hey guys, just thought I'd make a video. I wasn't planning on making one, but I just had to make one tonight. If you're hearing this noise, it's the fan. It's kind of hot in here, plus I don't like sitting here talking with no sound in the house. It's just a little creepy. You know, I got the TV off, so I just don't want to, excuse me, I just don't want to, make it that quiet. So if this is too loud of a fan, tell me in the comments, and I won't make one as loud. I'll turn the fan on low, but it's just really warm in here tonight, and that's going to change. It's supposed to get cool, so I dread that. But anyway, getting on with the video. Me and my mom, we had a big argument, not physical, just verbal, argument. And it's funny, growing up, I always thought that, I didn't want to think that I had it just a bad life. I didn't want to think that because, if you have a good life as a young person and you just ruin it, through drug use, or if you're in a marriage and you screw on your spouse, or if you had a good job and you just didn't go to work and you blew, whatever. Then that's on you, and you can deal with that. Yeah, you can be mad at yourself. You can try to fix it if you can, but at least you can deal with it, right? You screwed up. You blew it, But when you feel like you just didn't have it good from the beginning, that's what really bothers you. And like I said, pardon my voice, I'm a little hoarse tonight, but when you feel like you didn't have a chance, ever, that bothers you. And I think for the longest time, I didn't want to believe that. I didn't want to believe that it was just, I just drew a bad stick in life. I drew the short end of the stick. When we were drawing straws, I got the shortest. Yet, I can tell as I look and I listen about other people, I didn't have it that, I had it really bad. And I didn't even understand that. For one, most of the people that I know, and believe my mom would say it, oh, I'm a bad son, and all this. And I'm not going to say I'm perfect. I'm certainly not, Nobody is. But that's really the point. Most people are pretty rotten. I mean, the Bible even teaches that. Most people aren't that good. You ain't that great, man. You're not a good person. You're not even a good person judging by the world standards. You're not a good person. But anyway. Excuse me. I always thought, well, maybe I didn't have it as bad. But maybe I am kind of just bad. Maybe I'm just a screw up and a loser. I really thought that. And that it was kind of my fault, almost like I was born with the golden goose and, or the golden nugget and I lost it kind of thing, right? And I was told that whenever I would, I never complained much to people about my life, but if I ever did, all you'd ever get from family, friends, or anybody, man, do you know how good you had it? Man, I know people that had something. So what does it do? It make, and I'm young at the time. It makes you go, well, yeah. And my mom would always throw, not growing up on a farm, she'd throw that in my face because she grew up on a plantation, a sharecropper farm. They were pretty poor. Well, I couldn't come back at that. I didn't grow up that way. Now, that had nothing to do with her. It ain't like she chose to do that for her life. She didn't marry a sharecropper for a husband, right? Come on. But, that would always be thrown in my face. And I kind of laugh at it. Because now, back then, it really bothered me. I'd be like, well, yeah, I didn't grow up in a sharecropper home. So, yeah, I guess they did have it better. But then I didn't look, and of course she didn't either, at all the things she had that I didn't have, that any professional, any sociologist, any psychologist, any very well-educated, anything would say, he had it rougher than you did. He had a lot of strikes against him, And as we know, women can have a lot of strikes in their life, as I'm going to mention in a minute, and they can recover from it because of just them being women. They can recover from it. A man, they can always marry a man who can raise their status. He can raise their financial situation. He can raise their status. He can give her a better life and get her out of that misery. Not always a woman can do that, but, many times she can. And I've seen it happen over and over. And I started looking, at my situation. And I started going, wow, my mom had all the things that I didn't have that make life purposeful, that make it worth living, and that keep you happy, or at least sane. Maybe not happy, content, right? Yeah, it's not perfect, it's not utopia, but you're okay. I'd like to have better, but hey, if this is my lot in life, I can take it. And I can smile most days. That kind of thing. And I started looking at what she had. And number one, my mother had a father who was there. He was always at home because he worked on a farm. So he didn't have to go to work, so he literally was always there. She had a father all through her teenage years, through lots of her adult years, at least into her 40s and 50s. Pretty lucky. A lot of people don't get that. My grandfather married very late, by the way. He was a Depression kid. Grew up in a lot of poverty, Didn't get married till he was, I believe, 32. So, for back then, that was really old, to get married. And, but, what was he, he really, I don't think he had much choice. I think the main thing was the Depression. There was no work. And, as we all know, if a man can't provide, he ain't gonna get married. And, so she had him her whole life. She had a good mom. Now, my grandmother wasn't perfect. Nobody is. But if you had known my grandmother, she was that typical 50s wife that we kind of fantasize about. She wasn't a 10, and I'm talking about when I saw her when she was younger, By the time I knew her, she was, older. But she was not the typical beauty. But now, would you take it compared to anything today? Oh, yeah. She, of course, didn't have tattoos all over her. She wasn't a skank. She was, obviously nothing like that. She got married at 18. She was a virgin. I don't think she'd ever dated a man before that. So, my grandfather, how lucky he was also. And I may make a separate video on that. But, there was my grandmother. And you had to know my grandmother. She was so kind-hearted. Always happy. Never had much of anything materially. I mean, most women would croak at what my grandmother had to live in. From her orphan days, my grandmother was an orphan. Just had a rough childhood, lived with a ton of different people. Never was bitter. At least she didn't show it. Was not bitter. Ended up getting married. Had a family. Had 3 children. And she was fairly happy. Like I said, they were financially poor, but they were happy. Wow, once again, come back to that later. And like I said, she was not a nagging wife as far as I could tell. I mean, every woman does it sometimes. I think that's just going to happen, even with the best of women. They're just going to nag sometimes, right? But she was supportive. She respected my granddad. She called him sir, called him daddy, because of course he was a lot older than her, but the point was it was respect. She respected him as the head of the house. She cleaned the house, kept it spotless, and they lived in an old plantation house. Not exactly an easy house to keep clean, and she kept it spotless because everybody told us that she did. My mom, everybody. So she had, and of course, she was there. She wasn't gone. She wasn't going to work. She wasn't, all that kind of stuff. My mom also had 2 sisters. My mom was a middle child. She had two sisters. They were pretty close with each other. She double dated with one through the years. I think they were instrumental in how each of them met their husbands. One of them, of course, being my father. And they got along. They were close. She talked to her all the time on the phone. My mom's other sister, they weren't as close, but they got along. There sort of wasn't, there was no animosity. There was no, I just really can't stand her. It was nothing like that. They were a little different, but they got along, and they certainly would help each other and be close to each other. So she had that. I didn't have that. All three of the things I mentioned, a father, well, I had a mother. Mom was there. I shouldn't say that. That I had 1 out of 3. Didn't have a father. Didn't have. I had a sister, but we weren't close at all. We were when we were young, like as kids. But the minute she turned 16, she became the modern American woman, and that you study about, and it all went south. I did the best I could. I tried. I was treated very poorly by her, and I'm not sad about it. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I did everything I could. It was tough. My mom had lots of cousins that they saw a lot, and they were close. Tons of cousins. She had tons of them. They were all close and got along with each other, played with each other, played outside, and, grew up in that day and time much different than what I grew up in. She had kids around her. Even though they lived in a small, very small town, there were kids around them that they could play with and have fun, and it was a safe time. 1950s, 60s, some of the best times you could grow up in. It couldn't have been much better. And compared to today, it was utopia compared to today. Very lucky. And I laugh at thinking of that, because number one, I had one cousin that I was close with. One. We did not see each other all the time. We spent the night on and off with each other, but we didn't see each other all the time. I remember I had no friends growing up, because by the time I came of age in our neighborhood, all the kids but one, they were older than us by several years, and you know how it is as kids. If you're 33 years old and somebody's 36, that's not a huge deal. If you're 13 and somebody is 16, that's a huge deal. It's much different as kids. And we, of course, wasn't close to any of them. We never saw them. They were already driving by the time we came of age. And, what can we do? And, so there was another thing I didn't have. Didn't have a father. Didn't have close siblings. Did not have friends. She had all those things. In high school, she had friends. Quite a few. Was she the most popular girl in school? Of course not. She wasn't in with the clique, as you would say. But she had friends. She socialized. She spent the night. She had a pretty decent social life. I didn't have any of those things. I was bullied when I was younger. Of course, I was autistic, so part of it, that was me, in the sense that I didn't care about having any friends. I was autistic. I didn't know that. That's in your brain. Nothing I could have done. Nothing I could have done about that. Like I said, had really no friends in high school. Some of that was my fault. I can't blame that on everybody. But it wasn't my fault in the sense that the reason I didn't have some friends by the time I got into high school, most kids didn't really socialize with me when I was in elementary school. I had maybe one that did. Most kids didn't seem to like me. But, I mean, I was a kid. I mean, it wasn't like I was some mean kid. I was a good kid. I was quiet, though. But as I got into high school, see, I couldn't drive. You know, I couldn't get a license. I didn't drive a car. And see, everybody started getting their license. And of course, that embarrassed me. Because it was like, oh, come on, Shane, you can't do this. Everybody else is doing it. Of course, I didn't know I was autistic at the time. So, you know, there you go again. I mean, now she didn't have to worry about that. Now, my mom didn't drive either. Not because she couldn't. My granddad wouldn't show him. It's a long story. Pretty sure it's the whole, you know, gender role thing, which was more strictly enforced back then than obviously it is now. It isn't enforced at all now. But, it's just funny that she didn't have a car, of course, you know, didn't have a license because he wouldn't teach her. I think she learned at 18 because they didn't teach her. Did she get to get out and go? Oh, yes, she did. I don't know if she went all the time, but she had people pick her up. You could go have fun. You could go be with friends. Did I get that very much? No. In high school, I didn't get any of that. None of it. Nobody came and picked me up in high school, you know, from school. Hell, I never had that. And what happened is I kind of distanced myself from people because everybody'd be like, yeah, we ought to hang out sometime, you know, Shane. And I'd be like, yeah, sure. And then we'll just drive over and meet us somewhere. Well, of course, I couldn't do that. So I would just make things up. And I don't have no car. I don't have no money. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. I was humiliated to tell them I didn't know how to drive because I looked like an idiot, you know. Even though nowadays, I, of course, know what was wrong. And nowadays, a lot of kids don't drive. And, of course, if I lived in the city, it wouldn't have mattered, you know that. But I lived in a rural area. Most kids drove when I was young. And it wasn't no big deal for most of them. My mom never had those problems. Never had that issue. And then at 18, she got her license. I, of course, didn't get my license till I was in my early 30s. Quite a bit of a difference. And also, she's a girl, right? Doesn't matter if a girl has her license. She's going to get dates, you know. And friends will pick her up. I'm sure other girls would have picked her up if they drove, you know, and could go somewhere. You know, girls will do that for each other. It's no big deal with them. For us, oh yeah, big deal. And of course, the final one, my mom had boyfriends. Not a ton of them. And I agree with her on that. I don't think she dated probably a ton, but she dated. She went with my aunt. My aunt was older than her, and Mom told me the story about going with them. She was kind of the chaperone, make sure, you know, nothing was going on. Went with my aunt when she was 14, and my aunt was about 16 or 17. Mom might have been 15, whatever. Went with her. Did I ever get to do anything at 15? No. I had nothing like that. Nothing. And never would have it in my life, period. You know, and as I looked, and I'm going, no, you had quite a bit better than I did. Matter of fact, it wasn't even close. If you were keeping score, she's about 10, and I'm 1. Be like a baseball score. I'm down 10 to 1. Then you get on to other people I know. Most of my cousins, what did they have? Oh yeah, and by the way, my mom was not. I need to go back to this real quick. She also wasn't autistic. So there you go. My dad, of course, I never knew my dad very well. He died when I was young. Obviously a major setback. I think I know my dad, you know, had a father. They weren't the perfect parents, but he had them there. And studies have now proven and shown that, you know, this has been proven now. It's, you know, a boy without a father, it's just detrimental to him most of the time. Just is. He needs a father. He needs guidance, you know. And if he doesn't have it, he's going to be in trouble. And my dad had that. He had his mom. They weren't the most saintly people, but they were good people. My grandparents were okay. They provided. They took care of their kids. He had 2 sisters. They were not extremely close. He was the youngest child. He had pretty good money. These, you know, for them, they had more money than what my mom had. And he had a job, I think, by the time he was 14, so he had some money. But, you know, I think he was mowing lawns, things like that, you know. People could say, well, Shane, you could have done that. Yeah, I could have, but I was autistic, man. I had coordination problems. Those were just things I was not able to do. I mean, I could have not only not done the job well, you know, and messed up and everything, I could have got severely hurt because of my coordination in my hands. So, you know, he didn't have those problems, and he was able to mow lawns, make decent money. You know, so he had some money on the side. When he was 16, he got his license at 16, obviously, which a boy needs to do if he wants to get his social life going. I mean, he just has to do it. If I was a guy, I would tell most of you guys out there, you know, anybody that's, you know, I don't know if anybody that young's watching this, but, you know, you need to try to get your driver's license as early as you can, because you have to do everything, you know. Whether that's fair or not, you just do. But my dad got his license at 16, got a motorcycle at 16, because they worked on motorcycles, him and my granddad. So he had pretty good, had a decent job. I know he went and worked at a grocery store, I think my aunt said. He dated a little bit, not a ton, because he got married young. But he had a few girlfriends. One is more than what I had. So, yeah, and then my dad got married, ended up getting a good job. You know, for a guy that didn't go to college and didn't really try hard in school. That's his words, not mine. Yeah, I mean, Mom said he would admit that all the time, so, you know, it's not like I'm saying it. And, he ended up getting a job at you know, he was a plumber steam fitter, made almost $50,000 a year. For back then, where we lived, that was pretty comfortable, man. You make that kind of money, you can get you a house. He bought a swimming pool. We had a swimming pool. We had a nice little house, 2-door garage. We definitely were a middle-class family. You know, it was definitely what we were, lower middle class, but we were at least middle class. And like I said, we were comfortable as long as we just didn't blow all of our money. My mom didn't have to work, you know, didn't have to have a job. You know, they were completely comfortable. Did I ever have any of those things like my dad had? I don't think so. And there's no way I could have done my dad's job. No way. Like I said, whether I wanted to or not, whether I was hardworking or not, it wouldn't have mattered. My autism would have kept me from being able to do that. And then, well, I want to make a part 2 on this because this video is getting long. So let me make a part 2 on this, and I'll get back to you. Okay, guys. Thanks.